Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 5. In Module 5, we are going to discuss a topic that has a lot of real-world implications, and that is the topic of free will. And metaphysically speaking, there's really more than one problem of free will. The ancient Greeks thought that everything we did was determined by fate with a capital F, and many people today think that they have a fate that the universe has somehow determined for them, and try as they might, they're never going to escape that fate. There's also the traditional theological problem of free will. If God exists, and God has the properties that are normally attributed to God, that God is all-knowing, if God knows everything we are going to do throughout our whole life, does this also mean that God has predetermined everything we are going to do? That's often voiced as, does divine foreknowledge entail predestination? Well, we can't do everything in this course, and those are legitimate issues to discuss. But in this course, we're going to focus on what I usually call the scientific problem of free will, and that has to do with the claim that if we are in a world, a material world governed by fixed, rigid scientific laws, do those laws allow for freedom of the will? If we are beings that are, whose bodies at least are governed by the laws of nature, does that also mean that all of our choices are governed by the laws of nature? Now, one of the simplest, if not extreme, views on this we're going to see was Baron de Holbach's view, also held by many other scientists and philosophers throughout the ages, the view called hard determinism. Hard determinism basically says that the laws of nature are so rigid, and we, being a part of nature, have all of our actions governed by rigid scientific laws, such that whatever choice we make is conditioned by all of the past historical causes leading up to that choice. And if that's the case, they say, look, no matter how much we may think we're choosing freely, all of our choices were governed by the historical causes leading up to them. And one of the things that is controversial about hard determinism is they say that our choices are so inexorably determined that we have no moral responsibility. This is called incompatibilism, namely the view that our choices are determined by natural causes is incompatible with the claim that we are morally responsible for our actions. Now, that claim makes a lot of philosophers, and has made a lot of philosophers, uneasy. We don't really want to go there, to saying that we have no moral responsibility for our actions. Another type of determinism that we call soft determinism agrees with determinism that everything we do is conditioned by prior causes, but it says, well, here's how we can work in enough freedom of action to entail that we are morally responsible for what we do. And that is, if our actions are determined by some inner motive, whether it be a belief, a want, or a desire to do A, then our doing A is free. If our actions are coerced by some kind of external force, either physically or psychologically, then we really did not act freely. There were two other views that emphasize freedom of the will. There's a view that we're not going to spend a lot of time on called indeterminism. That is a view that comes about by looking at what happens at the molecular and atomic level in physics. The fact that things seem to be unpredictable and not rigidly determined at the molecular and atomic level. And some people have argued that this gives us enough space to talk about free will. But when you think about it, when we really want to talk about whether we have free will, we don't want to talk about our actions being random and unpredictable. We want to talk about whether we can initiate actions that we did ourselves, by ourselves. And so indeterminism for a lot of people is a blind alley. Finally, there is libertarianism. Now you need to distinguish this from the view in political philosophy. Libertarianism in political philosophy is simply the view that the less government, the better. Basically, libertarianism in the area of free will means that we are put together such that our actions are not determined totally by prior causes. And most of the people who advocate, or at least a lot of people who advocate libertarianism, also agree with people like Descartes that we have an immaterial soul that is not conditioned by rigid physical laws. Well, at any rate, these are the four positions. We're going to look, though, at Jean-Paul Sartre as an example of libertarianism. He believes that when we look into ourselves, if we start with our subjective experience, then we have to conclude that we are condemned to be free. And he believes that we can remake our human nature, and maybe I should say make our human nature, on the basis of the free choices that we make, such that we are responsible for the people that we become. Now, this subjective experience for the hard determinists is simply an illusion, but for Sartre, it's the starting point of his whole philosophy. Enjoy the module, and it gives you a lot of very practical things to think about. Bye-bye.